Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hi, it's Dr. Gemma, and welcome to episode 161 of the Cognitive Podcast. This was recorded, and then somehow the recording vanished. I'm not sure what I did, but since I had COVID last week, which will be part of episode 162, anything might have happened. I tell you, anything. So I'm recording this on Christmas night, 2023, looking at my old show notes, which is great, because I came home all revved about the Evolution of Psychotherapy conference, and probably was kind of incoherent anyway in the original recording, so hopefully this will make a lot more sense. In the warm thanks department, warm thanks to Turbo Gal and also to the others who have been making consistently kind comments about the Romule sweater. Please keep in mind as you see this develop, it is a piece of art in progress. And I mean, these sweaters are basically more art than craft. I have to say that I'm kind of designing them as I go, and every year I learn many new things from doing the Romule sweater. And I'm really, really pleased with how this has gone, and I'm deeply in love with all of my Romule sweaters, the 4 of them I have now. I think it's up to 4. One of them was actually made at Easter, so. But at any rate, it is astonishing what I learn when I do these things. And I think the progression has been towards a more Fair Isle type sweater, because I just want to. And also, I'm using my hand spun, so these usually come out a bit on the rustic side, and they're just a lot of fun. So thank you for your patience, and please remember, it's a work in progress. And all of them have been extremely satisfying to wear, although I have to admit, my heart goes with the first one, which was all hand spun, and I believe it was the Mad Skill Mammoth sweater, which to this day I'm astonished that I pulled that one off. And that was such a great experience because it taught me first and foremost that I should be using my hand spun, and that I can adapt my hand spun no matter how well it may or may not have come out if I'm being clever. And so I'm deeply, deeply fond of my hand spun sweaters, and they tend to be based around the Romule experiments. Meanwhile, thank you, Turbo Gal. You said a very nice comment about it, and thank you to everybody who's been making nice comments. In case you're wondering, if I sound a little hesitant, that's because Minerva has just jumped into my lap. And to quote T.S. Eliot, she's a 25-pounder, or I am a bounder. She has gotten quite big. Yes, she's rubbing against my hands. I'm trying to remember the name. That's one of Old Possum's book of practical cats. It's one of those poems. Bustopher Jones. It's Bustopher Jones. And she just whacked the recorder with her tail. Keeping it real here. Meanwhile, CFR 10 in 2024, the information is right there. There is a thread. I was asked this week when the sign-ups will start. I was excited to find we have a new person who definitely has the date open and wants to come. That, my friends, is the spirit. So the information thread is linked there. And right now I am thinking that the returning people will get to start sign-ups July 1st. And the noobs will get to start sign-ups on August 1st. And that's to give me a chance to collect enough people and also to start collecting the registration fee, which at this point I'm hoping will be $30 or even less. We have to see. They gave us a room price. Oh, well, the information is in the show notes. And I was a little distracted because Ethan, who's been pretty good, said, well, I'll give you 10 rooms at this price. And it's like, are you telling me we only used 10 rooms last year? So we will see how that develops. but I'm sure I can get more than that. I'm not really worried about it. The info thread is on Ravelry. Yes, he did tell me he would give us more if we needed them. What's on my hooks and needles? Well, as of these show notes, I had finished the Blueberry Waffle Sock in the Deep Forest, which is a colorway from Cutiful Christina's Cutiful Yarns. Link is at the bottom of the show notes. Also should be in my Ravelry notes. At any rate, as you can see, they're stunningly beautiful. That colorway makes me insane. To me, it looks like it's an overdye with using black and green, and it's just so handsome. These are the first socks in many moons where I got compliments on them. I was really shocked. I was sitting at a restaurant at Evolution. The waitress said, "Oh my gosh, your socks are so beautiful. I know that sounds strange." And I said, "No, it doesn't. I hand knit them." So there you go, Christina. More praise for your fabulous colorway. I have a little bit of it left that will be going into more scrappy socks, which reminds me to say, I did finish the CFR 23 scrappy socks. You can see them there. They don't photograph as well as they look. I'm a little bit surprised by that. They're really beautiful in real time, and yet the photos don't seem to be showing it. So I want you to know, yes, the CFR scrappy socks, handsome, handsome, but they do not compare with the Blueberry Waffle Sock in the Deep Forest. I was asked what the pattern was, and again, that's in the show notes. You can get to the link in Ravelry, which will take you right to the sock pattern. Meanwhile, in progress, the stash toss is now at 38 in versus 82 skeins out. I am measuring in skeins, not in yards. It's kind of iffy. Part of me says if I was measuring this in yards, this would look phenomenal. But I'm really thinking about bulk space in my stash. And so I'm just going by skeins. It's very, very uneven. I had one skein that went into the Romule sweater I really think was probably 30 yards. On the other hand, I was using Lisa Souza's skeins, and those babies are like 500 yards. So I think it's evening out in the end. I love the stash toss. It's been an incredibly important thing to me this year because it's really shown me how much I buy, when I buy, what makes me buy. And I'm pleased to say mostly I've been buying just to complete things, with the lone exception of the yarn from Lisa Souza that is a new project. It's the Estrella sweater. Yes, I have plenty of sweaters worth of yarn to go, but I still broke down because I love the Estrella and I love Lisa's colorway St. Louis Blues. It's just such a perfect combination. And then using the gold, I cannot remember the name, from Malabrigo Rios. I think it's called Sunset. Oh my God, they're so beautiful. But at any rate, that is down the road. Meanwhile, it's been really good because I've learned so much about my buying habits. You may remember that this year, I only counted skeins out if I started them this year after January 1st, 2023 and finished them this year. And so next year, I will not stick to that. Next year, because I've started several skeins and the sweaters will probably go into 2024, I will actually count those now, just whole cloth. So anything I finish when I do next year's stash toss. Now, next year's stash toss, I will start the in versus out at 0. So I'm not carrying over the 38 in from this year. And I'm just, again, starting at 0 in versus 0 out. And I'm hoping I will probably finish a few little projects right at the beginning of the year. So that should get us going. So yes, it looks to me like I may finish the Superstition sweater, which I think is up to like 9 skeins. So that will certainly raise the number. I hopefully will finish the silk-based cowl that I'll get to in a minute. For my hand spun, that would take out 2 more skeins. And as you can see, I'm doing the socks from Evolution, and I will get down to that. So at any rate, the Romule sweater, starting at the very beginning, the Romule sweater goes on, and at this point I have divided the arms. I have finished the collar and divided the arms from the body, and that's where we are. And I'm not going to say much about that. Hopefully I will tell you about that when I record episode 162, my episode agenda is a little staggered because I lost 161. So we will see how that goes. But meanwhile, I went to Evolution of Psychotherapy. And by the way, you should look at the show notes. I have some beautiful pictures from it. Now, if you're following my feeds on Instagram and Facebook, I probably bored the heck out of you because I was just like, look, I'm in a session, and taking really tedious pictures of sessions. They're not in the show notes, I don't believe. But there are some more artistic pictures there. So I went to Evolution, and I had a million things I wanted to take, but I decided it had to be portable. So I actually broke down and wound 2 balls from a big skein of some very pretty sock yarn from, I think it's called Whimsical Woods, and it's called, I'm sorry, cover the kids' ears. Ready? That 90s arse, to use the British version that's not offensive to Americans, but probably is to Brits. Anyway, or, oh well, that's equal time, that 90s ass. And I took 2 needles that were 1.5 American, whatever that is in metric. And it's small for me. I've gone down a needle size just when I'm doing my plain vanilla socks. So I took 2 1.5s, and I took these half skeins that I wound into 2 separate balls. And it was a great idea because I forgot to take waste yarn. And thank goodness I brought the second set of needles, because I sat there going, oh no, what do I do? And then realized I knit 2 half socks. I knit down to the waste yarn. And I thought, can I run to any kind of yarn store here? But I was in Anaheim without a car, so I couldn't. So it was really, really great, I have to say. I took the 2 half socks, and I took the silk cowl, the vineyard cowl, and I worked on those. And I also believe I finished the very, very end of the beautiful, beautiful deep forest socks using the blueberry waffle socks pattern. So I finished those, and then I went on to the half socks. And it just worked out so well. So I came home, and I did not finish the vineyard cowl, but I came home with 2 half socks. And the first thing I did when I got home was added the waste yarn and started the feet. And we will get onto that in episode 162, how that went. But there you can see the 2 halves with their waste yarn after I came home. And you can also see me wearing the vineyard cowl, which I could stop in terms of its size, but I have just enough yarn left that I figure I might as well use this stuff up. This is, I believe it might be pure silk. There might be something else in with it. I don't even remember, but I'm sure loving it. It's acting like the skein I'm using now is acting like it's pure silk. I think what I did was I straight up spun the Vineyard colorway fluff from Be Myself, who's no longer in business, so no links there. And it may have been a mix of fiber. But then I used another one that was a mix of my single from her, from Be Myself, and something else. So heaven only knows what's in this thing, but it's gorgeous, and it's a perfect color for me. I have to say blues and greens and sometimes paler purples work very well with my coloring. So I'm having a great time on that, but it's never getting finished because it's mostly silk, and there are little tiny stitches on my D as in dog hook. Meanwhile, I did not do anything on the remaining sock yarn cowls. I've only listed number 4, but I believe I've got 3 and 4 on my tabletop as I sit here. And I have all sorts of leftover bits of sock yarn because I just want to get through these things. They're going to a shelter. And the Superstition sweater, as of the time I did the show notes, I was still on the first sleeve. And that's become a bit of a challenge. Do I want to do that, or do I want to do the Romule sweater over my Christmas break? But I'll get into that in episode 162. And I didn't touch the Pennsylvania Dutch embroidery, sad but true. But you can see the books I've been using, and one video for German Short Rows, to make the Romule sweater, and just having a wonderful time with that. Dizzy Blondes, no spinning. I'd like to have spun, but I really couldn't carry any more. When I went to Evolution, I had one roller bag, and I took it on the bus and the train, and it was huge and heavier than I expected. It wasn't huge, it's a small bag, but it was stuffed full, and it was quite heavy. So there we go. So let's get on to the strategy. Well, this is a little bit late considering it's Christmas Day, but hey, we all have Romeo left, right? We still have guests until January 1st, and of course, the kids are home from school. So the strategy is don't forget to rest. And to rest, you're going to have to set boundaries. And this is where people get it wrong. Everybody goes, great, I've got time off, and then they drive themselves crazy, rushing hither and yon. This, as it turns out, is a pretty ironic strategy when I get back to what happened to us this past week. But you really do need to set boundaries with people. That is, no, I am not doing everything you want me to do. No, just because you're home, you are not able to use me as your personal taxi driver or Uber driver. No, it isn't going to be that way. And the same with resting. Now, this is going to come a little late, but what I would tell you with what you have left of this holiday, look, get out the crock pot, the slow cooker, get out the pressure cooker, take everything out of your freezer and make everything. Spend one day just setting up all the meals you can. If you're an Instant Pot person and you can do dump and go meals, that's excellent. Consider making a huge vat of soup and letting that be the food for a few evenings. My favorite has always been a potato leek for this kind of thing. Now, of course, I can't eat potatoes, but you get the idea. I also used to like potato cheese or broccoli cheese type soups. You remember that bird you cooked at Thanksgiving, and you remember how you made all that great bone broth along with Dr. Gemma, don't you? It's time to defrost a spitload of that stuff, put it in your slow cooker, and put broccoli in it and a lot of garlic because I am half Italian, you know, and cook that baby slowly overnight on low. And then add your broccoli in the morning, and when it's nice and thick, you put some other kind of thickener. If you're keto, it's going to be almond flour. But if you're not, it's probably, I forget what you people use, white flour, cornstarch, whatever. But you're going to thicken it, and then you're going to shred that cheddar into it. And don't forget that putting a little bit of onion, sauteing some onion in the bottom of a frying pan, and then throwing it in there with that bone broth. And did I mention garlic? And, you know, just all that stuff. You're going to make yourself a broccoli cheddar soup. And you're just going to let people eat off that for a while. Take it from Mama Gemma. Take it from a good Amish Italian girl. You want to make a big vat of soup. And then you just want to let everybody eat off that. And, of course, if you make it in a crock pot, it's ceramic. You know, that cheese won't stick as badly. You know what I'm saying here? Okay. But the idea is you're not supposed to become the holiday slave, particularly those of you with kids or with relatives visiting from out of town. I think one of the other things is once the stores open tomorrow on Boxing Day on the 26th, go out with your family members, let them pick some ingredients they like, and then draft them into cooking. You are not supposed to run yourself down during the holidays while you pretend that you're having time off and resting. Sort your boundaries out. Okay, in the meantime, I did put in a few things. There was a great saying from Stephen King I couldn't resist about video games. I know the temptation is to let the kids watch TV and do videos all day long. You know what? It's their vacation too. Just make sure you are keeping an eye on what's going on in those video games. Now, back in the good old days, when I first started seeing kids in the 90s, they told us, oh no, don't let them watch video games, don't let them play them, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, you know what? Now half the adults out there are hooked on serious games. So the reality is, our kids are being raised with this. This is what their generation does. If you think you're just going to ban it, I wish you a lot of luck. I'm reminded of what happened to me the minute I got to undergraduate university in my dorm. We were never allowed to have soda as kids. Okay, let me explain to you that I handled that by going to the cafeteria that was part of our room and board at the freshman dorm known as Hill House. I went down to that cafeteria and I plugged my glass. I plugged 3 or 4 glasses because I watched other people do it into the Pepsi machine. I've always been a Pepsi fan. And I was high as a kite every night on Pepsi, because I wasn't really raised to handle it. Ironically, I was, as an Italian girl, raised to handle wine and alcohol. So I really wasn't that interested in booze, but Pepsi, oh baby, yes. Unlimited amounts at those dorm cafeterias. I loved it. The moral of that story is somebody should have taught me to moderate my Pepsi like they taught me to moderate my wine, but nobody was paying attention to my particular addiction as a teenager. I would tell you, you have to pay attention to what your kids are doing with video games, particularly over the holidays. Yes, I think it's okay for kids to play video games as long as the parents are watching out what they're being exposed to. I would say the same about what you're watching on TV, what you're streaming as movies, what you're listening to as podcasts. It's hard parenting now because this stuff is out there and you've got to really attend to it. And yeah, your kids can hide what they're doing, but please have some boundaries. At the same time, remember that if you teach your kids to live with these things without being permissive about it, your kids are going to probably do okay. It's really about your family values, that a few video games aren't going to kill them if you have a lot of other family activities together. Keep your head on your shoulders there. Meanwhile, Tech Girl Jen put up a good thing about how to spot phishing. And I did get phished last night. I was just going to tell you how this never happened, and yet it did. And so there is the phishing stuff, and you want to pay attention to that. And also, I could not resist something from littlebuddha.com, which is a snowman melting, and it says, we do not have to continue holiday traditions that leave us broke, overwhelmed, and tired. Bingo! On to the fluffy books. Ooh, look at me book. Well, I must say, on Netflix, I've been watching the end of Season 1 and Season 2 of Sister Boniface. These are so tame, it's pathetic. These are a spin-off of the Father Brown series. If you know Father Brown on BritBox, BBC, very nice, very gentle. If you know the actual Father Brown stories by G.K. Chesterton, you are a lucky person and you have had a great reading experience. G.K. Chesterton is one of these writers at the early 20th century. He's largely overlooked these days. He's very spiritual. He's very deeply committed to Catholicism, but he doesn't beat you over the head with it, fortunately. Think C.S. Lewis, think J.R.R. Tolkien. All these men were committed to their faiths, but you don't feel like they're bashing you with it. And Chesterton writes amazing, amazing stuff. The Man Who Was Thursday remains one of my absolute favorite novels ever written because it's very much in the tone of its time, a bit of a send-up on the spy novels and the paranoia about the fascists and the communists. I can't explain Chesterton. He's just an amazing guy, and the Father Brown stories are delightful. The BBC Father Brown, well, he's charming, and I love the guy who plays him, Mark something or other, guy who plays Mr. Weasley in the Harry Potter series. And these are very tame. They try to be socially relevant in the beginning, and then they kind of find their formula, which frankly is not very socially relevant. But anyway, Sister Boniface shows up in one of them, and she's a great character. She's the vintner for a local self-contained abbey, and she apparently went to med school, so she knows way more than she should, and she's got a scientific take on the world. Now, they spun her off into her own series. It started very slow. I didn't think it would make it. But what is attractive about the series? Well, it isn't Sister Boniface. She's got all the personality of a stick of chalk. What is attractive is they really try messing with the normal themes and tropes of the cozy mystery. So in Sister Boniface, the local cops, they're in the outback in Gloucestershire, which is not quite the outback it used to be, apparently. But anyway, I think it's the early 60s. They're in Gloucestershire. And the local constabulary feels very helpless in all these murder cases. And so they actually go to her for help. They appreciate her help. They treat her like a teammate. And that is very fun. To make up for it, they have sexual tension between the guy in charge of the constabulary and a local newspaper woman. And meanwhile, we've got the dumb PC. Are they called PCs? DCs? I forget what they're called. I'm sorry, my British mentality is fading. It's been a long day. But anyway, they've got the dumb officer. And she's cute, and it's a fun combination. I wouldn't call it brilliant, but if you enjoy Father Brown, you'll probably enjoy Sister Boniface. And it is kind of nice to see an intelligent woman running. In fact, actually, two strong, intelligent women in the original series kind of moving things along. So I really have enjoyed it. In the meantime, I am reading the latest book in the Ladies' Guide. Actually, it's the Countess of Harley Mysteries by Diane, with two N's, Freeman. And this is a newlywed's guide to something in murder. But anyway, I enjoy these. These are frothy and light, and actually I've discovered these are good to fall asleep to at night because there's really very little danger in them. So I'm enjoying that. I just finished it, actually. Only one of them went sort of south, and that's The Bride's Guide, because it's sort of a novel where everybody runs back and forth between two houses on her wedding day, and it's just boring. Frothy can go too far. This stuff, like all bubbles. But A Newlywed's Guide worked out really well, and I'm enjoying those books. I have them now on Audible, and by the way, I think the first two of them are free if you have an Audible subscription now. Why they're free, I can't tell you, but I just downloaded them today, and I'm enjoying them. So that's the Diane Freeman authored series, The Countess of Harley, and I really am enjoying those guys. Something I really like, oh, my little hero, it's my mug warmer. And you can see it in the picture there. It's got pretty lights, as you can see. It's got 3 settings. Each one has a different color. Apparently, you can also just put candles in flame-proof containers on this thing, and it'll melt the wax and release odor, which, I have to try because I mean to make candles this week. But anyway, I'm deeply, deeply enjoying my mug warmer. To my surprise, I took it with me to Evolution. Had it in my hotel room and loved it. It was amazing at night to always have hot tea. And it's true. I was in a very nice hotel. I was in the Sheraton, although that's a bit of a story. The Sheraton Park, or at the park, Anaheim, just down harbor from Catella, very, very close to Disneyland. Really equidistant between the park and also the Anaheim Convention Center. So I did not go to the park. I didn't even go that direction. But that's another story. But I love this thing. I took it with me on a whim. And I also took a lot of loose tea with me. My Plum Deluxe collection. I took my herbal advent calendar. Gee whiz, I had a good time with this. And, I just sat in my hotel room and I listened to virtual sessions and took hot baths and drank tea and knit socks, and how pleasant was that, let me tell you. I got very, very relaxed. So I'm going to recommend that mug warmer, and you can see a link to it in the show notes. It's from Amazon. Put a lid on it. Well, the Plum Deluxe Advent Calendar. I should be finished it today, but I think I have like one more package, and that's a long story that I'll tell you about in 162. But it was terrific, and you can see 2 of the days there from it, day 4 and day 5. And I'll start with day 5. This is Oregon Breakfast Herbal. This is pleasant. Now, of course, Plum Deluxe likes to use nuts in their formulations, particularly their herbals. Nuts are great. It's not my taste. In other words, I wouldn't say the Oregon Breakfast Herbal does not taste good. It tastes okay. It's pleasant. To me, I felt a little overwhelmed by the nutty flavor, and that didn't do well for me in the tea. However, it comes off as kind of an orange spice with that overriding nut flavor. The fragrance, well, I think I had a sense of smell at that point. It was so-so. And apparently they're phasing this one out. They've had it on sale all week. So I wouldn't get too excited about that. Day 4 was apple cinnamon based, and I quite liked it. And I'm sorry I can't read it better there. But day 4 was just delightful. It had a very good fragrance, had a very full flavor with a strong apple taste. Now, the interesting thing, so you know, as of today, on Plum Deluxe's website, these went on sale. And yes, I did go and I bought a ton of the Cherry Berry Plum, and I bought one of the Welsh Dream. These are both herbals. The Cherry Berry Plum was absolutely hands down, with no contest, my favorite thing they had. It was sensational. There was a mango in there that they're phasing out that was also good. a decaf black. I can't figure out why they're phasing it out. But the Cherry Berry Plum, it's not a regular blend. It is sensational. So run over to Plum Deluxe and look at their Advent Calendar sale. You heard it here, but you should look at it anyway because they had some really, really fun stuff. I would say their blends from the calendar that had candy cane in them, like I think that's supposed to be a mint, those tasted faint to me, but when I got home, I will spill the beans here, I found out I had COVID. And I don't know when I got it because I was motoring around at Evolution just fine. But I might have been losing my taste and smell. I never quite lost either of them, but that might explain why some of these were coming out so light for me, and I kept complaining about it on my Instagram. Meanwhile, I had a great time, and let's get on to that because it's time for the blather. Well, Evolution of Psychotherapy, wow. Now, I went for the second half, which I kind of regret that I didn't go to the first half, possibly because I wouldn't have gotten infected by COVID if I'd been on public transit a different day. Who knows, really? But, wow. Evolution was fabulous, but they got into an interesting thing in the second part of it. And that is the very impressive Martin Seligman from Penn, who does positive psych. He invented it. He got up and started talking about how he was really doing coaching. And he applied this to coaching, but he basically said that he does not like the idea that he's not immortal. He's very old now. I can't remember if he was 75 or 80 or something like that. He's at least 75. But anyway, he's having a hard time with mortality. And so he said, oh, they invented an app and it's all my books have been read into it. And it sounds just like me. And meanwhile, I'm using the app to talk to my dead friend, Tim Beck, the late Aaron Beck, the amazing Aaron Beck, who basically invented cognitive behavior along with two other guys. And he said, it just sounds just like Tim, even when you ask it questions you shouldn't know. And I'm sitting there going, no, you are not saying this. He gave a perfectly good session, but then he went into that. And I was horrified because I thought, well, maybe you think it's only going to be used for coaching. But if you give an application like that to the insurance companies, they're going to demand people use that before they get real help. We're going to have people killing themselves because they're forced to use an app instead of a real person. We're going to have people doing extreme actions so they can reach a real therapist. I was appalled. And no. All the research is that people do better with a human in the room. And the flimsy evidence for using AI, one of the things is, well, see, a lot of us are working virtually, so you don't need a person in the room. Not true. It needs to be studied. Patients seem to do well if they are high functioning with virtual therapy. And there's pros and cons. One of the biggest pros is someone like me who has health issues can continue my career, and I have a lot of experience, and I'm good at what I do. And the patient doesn't have to come to me, so patients can meet you from anywhere, which patients constantly cite as important to them, that they don't have to drive out to the back of Beyond to meet with me. Oh, it was really painful. And it got worse because David Burns, who is an amazing clinician, and he's very good at quick interventions that get big results. And Burns went to town. He just wants to do an app with AI, and he thinks it'll replace all of us, and it's our own fault because we're not as good as he is. That's basically what he told us. Oh, I love Dave Burns. He did a 3-hour workshop. It was incredibly helpful, as they always are, and then he went into that. So when they each had their individual discussion hours, people didn't go, and people were just horrified. I walked out of Seligman, and these two young women were walking next to me, and they were raging. And I turned around and I looked at them, and I said, am I correct in understanding you don't like what Professor Seligman just said? And they were like, yes. And I said, I'm going to tell you what an older clinician near retirement thinks. And they both looked at me and I said, you're right. I said, this is a travesty. We can't replace humans with machines. This is a horrible thing. And I said, it's okay for me because I'm reasonably well known. I've got good referrals. And the insurance companies love me. But I said, I think it's really sick that they're going to replace you with stuff like this. And then they just exploded at me like, yes, and blah, blah, blah. And they were right. Thank God for Professor Dan Siegel of UCLA, Dr. Siegel, who was stolen by UCLA from Harvard because they just gave him more money and more toys. Dan Siegel was one of the great He's a mensch. He's one of the greats. And Siegel has always been upfront about the fact that there's a huge emotional price that all of us pay as clinicians. And he's very supportive of people. And he gave this insanely good keynote speech at 8 in the morning, because Siegel still keeps hospital hours. He started out as a pediatrician, became a pediatric psychiatrist, has written book after book after book. And then he did this great talk in the morning, early morning. He got lured away from Harvard by UCLA because, weather, seriously. Weather, cost of living, yes, LA is still cheaper than Boston as far as I can tell. Anyway, Siegel comes in and he just very tactfully said, we should not be doing this. He said humans need the presence of other humans. He was working on mindfulness. He started showing us the neurological research, because Dan Siegel does not do psychobabble. When Siegel comes in and talks about mindfulness, he brings the research to bear. The guy is brilliant. And you'd love to hate him because he just does everything right. Gets picked up by Harvard when he's young, gets tenured there, UCLA fights for him. I'm sure everybody would have taken him. He could have gone anywhere he wanted. I believe it was UCLA and Harvard both gave him MRI machines in his office. Can you believe that? Talk about money. Anyway, and Siegel writes and he publishes and he's on the juries for other publications, and you want to hate him, except he's the nicest human being I've ever met. He's always kind. He has nothing but compassion for those of us on the front line. Anyway, Siegel, bless him. Siegel started talking in a very quiet, kind way about we must stay live with our patients where we can. We must be real, that the presence of a breathing human who is using individual responses is so valid. And oh, bless you, Dan. And then I went to hear Steve Hayes. I love Steve Hayes. He's the guy who originated ACT therapy, ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. He's the biggest mensch. As far as I'm concerned, ACT is basically a version of what I do of cognitive behavioral. But to him, it is psychodynamics. Very different. We have very different approaches. Hayes' big contribution was ACT is not a protocol. It's not a way to do therapy. It is a model that shows us why people come to therapy. There's 6 reasons and there's 6 appropriate types of responses to address those needs. And Hayes thinks you can do it no matter what kind of therapy you do. Hayes is amazing. Hayes also looks like Uncle Fester. He's bald as a cue ball. He's got naturally dark eye sockets. He's pale white. So it's really weird. You go to a Hayes workshop. I went for 3 hours, bless him. And it's like Uncle Fester teaches you ACT psychotherapy, bless him. And he just spells it out. He walks to the front, he starts talking about something, and he says, in the midst of it, some of my colleagues haven't dealt with their own mortality. They need to get over this AI garbage. He says, the reality is we are finite and we have to live with that. And he said, look, I'm 75, which you can't tell. Uncle Fester's kind of ageless, frankly. But he said, we need to get over this stuff. So bless you, Professors Hayes and Siegel. And meanwhile, I go to the hotel. Okay, and it's really exciting. I get taken to the train station by my beloved husband and son on Thursday afternoon. I hop on the train. I get to LA Union Station. I run to a restroom, and then I run on to the next train to Anaheim. I get to Anaheim. It's not too late. I catch, what is the bus number? The 50, Orange County Transit Authority, OCTA. I get on the 50 right outside the beautiful Arctic Station. You can see a picture. At the top of the show notes, there's like a big glass dome. That's the top of the escalators at the Arctic Station. And it is pointed in a good direction. The view is breathtaking, as you can see. So I get to the Arctic Station, and I get on my bus really easily using various apps to direct me. I paid for all my tickets online. Now, you can use your train ticket on Okta, so you can use your Metrolink to train. So I did that on the way in. But I could buy all the bus and rail passes online. It's just phenomenal. So I get down to Harbor in Katella, and I turn south on Harbor, and I head to the Sheraton. And I can't get in because there's strikers. And they're loud, and they're really nice people. They're not being harmful, but they're just blocking all the doors. Fortunately, I've been to the hotel before. I go around to a back entrance. I get somebody to let me in. I go to the front desk. They're mortified. They're like, how did you get in? We're so glad you're here. Of course, nobody tells me this from the hotel, hey, by the way, we've got these really powerful strikers. So they're feeling really ashamed. I'm being as nice as I can. I get upgraded to literally the best suite they have, $1,600 a night. I'm not kidding you. Now, was it a good suite? Not really. Frankly, it was 2 giant rooms that they had joined together. And so I had 2 bathrooms, one with a state-of-the-art shower and then one with a bathtub. You can tell what I used because I'm a bathtub fan. I took one shower and then said no. Meanwhile, the air conditioning and heating failed or was not turned on, and nobody would help me with it. So some surly guy from maintenance brought me a space heater and said, we'll fix it tomorrow, and they never did. So it was me and the space heater. So I ended up closing off half my suite, closing off the living room side, because there was no reason for me to use it. And why make somebody clean it, particularly since most of the maintenance people are on strike? Like, why would I do this? So I just lived in half the suite and was perfectly happy doing that. And there was no cooking except for they had basically a 1-cup Keurig arrangement. It's not a Keurig, but it's the same idea. And I used that just to boil hot water instantly and make a lot of hot tea because I brought my tea things with me. And there was a small fridge, which I never got to. I just ate out. And I had a perfectly good time because I found a Cheesecake Factory that was woefully undersubscribed. And I kept just walking into it. I think I ate at an IHOP one night too. I meant to go down to Joe's Crab Shack, farther down Arbor, but I never really got the energy to do it. So I'm good about that. And so every morning at 5:30 a.m., the strikers would come around and protest right under all the building. They walked around the building, air horns, drums, speakers. You got woken up every morning at 5:30. But that's really good because that got me in to see Professor Siegel, so I'm very happy about that. Anyway, it was quite the experience. And you can see pictures of me, my toes at least, in my bathtub. I did remember to bring some of my bath salts. Can you believe it? Talk about happy. And there's a lovely picture of my quite large bedroom with a king-size bed. And there's the bathroom with the bathtub. And there's the living room that I never bothered to use except to hang my towels to dry. So it was pretty adventurous. I was walking a few miles a day. And I could not figure out why I was so exhausted all the time. But it was still good. And that may or may not have been COVID onset. So the pup date, when I came home, everybody was good. Everybody was happy. And I haven't touched the watercolors class. I haven't done any work there. The hub state, well, I came home to a decorated tree, and that was beautiful. And I'm just overwhelmed by holiday boxes. The garage is filling up. But that hopefully will be some garden work. We will see how that goes. Meanwhile, no work on Project T, which I'm thinking of just suspending. And Project Cookbook, no, because... well, you'll find out in the next episode. And of course, the Green Fingers Report, the winter garden is in progress. It's just dreaming. So as I made these notes, Romeo was ahead December 23rd to January 1st, I'm happy to say. Yarnopoly and Second Saturday Stitchers, you can find their pages on Facebook, but I have just some information on their meetups. I also would like you to know there seems to be an extremely good and well-subscribed meetup at the Joanne Darcy Library. It's their Sit and Stitch, I think they call it, and it's usually the second and the fourth Saturday of every month, starting at 9 a.m. Apparently they have overflow on that. I have not yet been to it because I think I have patients who will be there. I try to avoid real time with my patients, because I don't get to be a human, I get to be a psychotherapist, And of course, CFR 10 will be at the Courtyard by Marriott in Valencia on September 28th, 2024. Minerva gets the last word, and it is, I am being held captive in that bedroom suite. You can see her lying by the leg of my bed there, because I have to eat the needles on the Christmas tree. We have spent days chasing her away from the tree, and finally we have just been keeping her in the back quarter of the house, which is the master bedroom suite, which is ironic because, well, as you'll hear in the next episode, I've been there with her. So there we go. I've left you with a beautiful Mary Engelbreit print that is a quote by Shakespeare. What is that from? Love's Labour's Lost, I think. Had I but one penny in the world, thou shouldst have it for gingerbread. I think it's Love's Labour's Lost. as opposed to the other one I keep thinking of is Much Ado About Nothing, but I'm pretty sure it's Love's Labour's Lost. Anyway, there it is, a Shakespeare quote with Mary Engelbreit, two of my favorite things jammed together. In the meantime, I have had a very strange week, as I will tell you in the next episode, that reminds me to tell you that we are a community. And by the way, go look at the pictures if you want to see a beautiful picture of the convention center. I just was so drawn by all those lines running together like a artist's perspective diagram. And of course, there's the little poster for Evolution. And there is a beautiful view of a late, was that late? No, it was mid-afternoon actually, out the glass dome of the Arctic Center in Anaheim. But I wanted you to see all these things. I had a great time at Evolution. By the way, I came out of it, I think I had 14 live hours and another, at least one of the virtual, but they unlock the rest of the virtual credits in January, and hopefully I will be able to use the other hours that I got by listening to the virtuals. They gave us 5 hours of virtual, but I think they only credited you with one presentation, and all of them were one except one was two. And anyway, hopefully I'll get credits for that. But it was certainly very worthwhile. It was certainly a fabulous time. And it's always good to see a little controversy go down at Evolution of Psychotherapy. So having said that, I must blend my voice with that of Dan Siegel and say, please remember that we are a community and we are at our best when we act like one. When we act in the best interest of our community, we are acting in our own individual best interest. And Siegel was very big on the idea that we are hyper-individualized and it is only harming us. And he points out that the shaman of various indigenous people see this as the lesson of COVID, that we had become hyper-individualized and we are kind of being punished for that. I don't know, I'm not one of those people, but I think it's a very viable point of view at this point. So please, everybody, remember when you take care of your community, you're taking care of yourself. Get your shots, try to be healthy, do the best you can. In the meantime, everybody stay safe, take care of each other, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.